Hello and welcome. This panel is titled Historical Cosplay When Worlds Collide, and we're here to talk to you today about what happens when you take both ends of the costuming spectrum and mush them together. Since this is airing on my channel, I assume y'all are familiar with me, but on the off chance we have some fresh faces around, my name is Jackie, and welcome to my channel, Fantastical Follies. Here we focus on historical and cosplay how-tos with a heavy dose of humor. I'm so thankful y'all can make it. We have a lot of talented makers on this panel. I'm so psyched. So I thought we could start it off by having each of you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you and what chunk of the internet we can find you at. So I'm going to start and just kind of go in the order that is on my screen, if that's all right with y'all. Okay, so we'll start with Casca.
Hi, I'm Casca. My YouTube channel is Crafting with Casca. I'm a bit of a multi-crafter. I do mainly sewing, but I also do like art and crochet and stuff like that as well. I primarily do historical costuming, vintage and historical cosplay. My main areas that I really like are late Victorian, 1940s, and I love like comic book stuff and kind of pop culture references and stuff like that.
Cool. Welcome. All right, next is going to be Miss Tiffany.
Hello, I am Tiffany. You can find me on YouTube as Rattle the Star Studio. I am a sewer, podcaster, tabletop game player, just a whole things. Yeah, most sewing crafting based. If you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you'll see a lot of other stuff out there. That's at Raccoon Bee, because why would my YouTube channel and my social media be the same thing? I also am with Casca and Edwardian time period as what I love making.
Awesome. Cool. All right, next we have Maggie.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm Paisley and Glue on all social media channels, including YouTube and Instagram, which is where I mostly am. I make costumes for theater in my real-time job. So cosplay is kind of the fun thing that I do for myself. And historical costuming, you know, I do that a lot in my normal job, but this actually, I'll say 2 years because it took so long to get the costume together. But Winifred Sanderson from Hocus Pocus was kind of my first really big historical cosplay that I did recently with Casey. We had such a good time at C2E2 this year. And so 18th century has kind of been my deep dive over the last year or two, but I don't really have a period. I love historical costuming in all its forms, whether it actually happened in history or not, or maybe we're just making it up. There are some things that I would like to do. I would really like to do a bustle period next. I think that might be my next thing, but I don't really have a plan.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Non-discriminatory eras.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to Casey.
Hi, I'm Casey Renee. I make ball gowns mostly, but I love to make ball gowns with a historical twist. So like if you were to do, I don't know, like Belle in 18th century, that's just what I like to do. I'm Casey Renee on all social media. And I do have a YouTube channel as well where I make, and so I'm not very funny. I try to be funny, but like it doesn't work. So I'm sorry. If, like Jackie, you can have all my bad jokes, like I swear. But I think my two favorite eras are probably like, I'm like polar opposites. I love, you know, pink, fluffy Rococo and then like Victorian goth. So that's kind of like, I don't know, it's just, I like them both. I can't decide which one. Half of the year is Victorian goth. The other half of the year is fluffy Rococo.
That's awesome. You have the end, you know, each end of the spectrum. That's a good way to live. So, all right, let's move on to Adrienne.
Hi, I'm Adrienne, wax sealed costumes across the internet, Instagram, TikTok. I have a not super active YouTube channel, but I'm trying to get into making more long form videos, also on Facebook. And I am a kind of all around costumer. I started with historical sewing when I first learned, and then cosplays, and of course also just historical cosplays. I love all sorts of crafting, leather crafting as well. Yeah.
Leather crafting is awesome. That's really cool. All right, let's move on to Cindy.
I am Cindy, and I am primarily on Instagram at Cat Eye on Designs, and I am a science teacher in real life, but I also do all the costumes for our high school's theater productions. So not quite as hardcore as Maggie, but I still do some costuming there. And I probably err more on the side of cosplay, but then I've been trying to work more historical stuff in there. And so, but really it's just like anything that strikes my fancy, I'll try it. I also do dabble in illustration and like prop making and just whatever craft, again, catches my eye.
Awesome. All right, and last but not least, Emilee.
Hello, I'm Emilee, also known as our Shield Maiden on social media. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter are my main platforms. This is Freya. She is joining for private. She'll probably leave as soon as, I was gonna say, as soon as I start talking, but I just got back from the convention, so she's deprived of attention and wants more. My favorite historical periods would probably be like Tudor, England, Regency, or late 18th century. So I guess I have three. But those kind of seem to be the ones that I kind of jump in between. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. I'm happy to have all of y'all. Welcome. I'm so excited. This is going to be an awesome panel. All right, so shall we get down to business? First off, I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about historical cosplay and what makes it different from straight historical or straight cosplay, and kind of what draws you to this blend of genres. And we'll start with Casca.
I think for me, it's having more freedom. So with straight historical, you've got all the stuff that's like, well, you have to do it this way. You have to like have this specific look because other things weren't around then. And with cosplay, just straight cosplay, it's like you have to look like the character. But if you mash the two, then you've got so many more options. Like you can have things that like just hint at the character you're cosplaying, but have a foot in the historical as well. So that's the kind of aspect that I really, really enjoy about it.
Awesome. And what about you, Tiffany?
Yeah, I like that it gives a freedom of what you're doing. I also like that it presents very unique challenges as well, depending on how historical cause you want with it. Allows a lot more sort of individuality in the outfit, which I really, really like. So like one of my biggest costumes actually came close. I did a Victorian Donald outfit. So it's this character, everyone pictures them one way. And now I have this like beautiful like Victorian ball gown in their face, and they're like, they get mind blown. And it's fun to like play around, which I just enjoy.
Yeah, like playing around that creativity is. Yeah. What about you, Maggie?
That I concur that the Donald Duck costume was very fun and very creative. That's how I found you recently. I enjoy that adding cosplay into historical costuming just sort of like shakes up the bucket, and then you can just, it really kind of frees you up to do whatever. So instead of feeling it like you need to be, you know, true to a fashion play or true to a portrait, you can say, well, maybe this element's not really period correct, but it's really important for the character to have it in order for it to be obvious that the character is that character in a historical setting. And it kind of frees you up from, if you have the tendency to feel like it needs to be historically accurate, to kind of jump out of that circle that might be limiting you a little bit. And I also enjoy the being able to flex those design muscles that we don't always get to flex when we're trying to make something accurate to a fandom or some sort of existing research. You can kind of draw from your own design experience and really kind of make it your own thing.
Agreed. All right, Casey?
So I like breaking rules, and I feel like historical cosplay allows you to break the historical costuming rules and break the cosplay rules. I don't know, I rules are great, but I like to sometimes like bust through the challenge of, okay, you're only allowed to do X, Y, Z, and say, but what if I added machine embroidery, you know? What if I dyed this a color that didn't exist? You know, so I like it for that reason, because I also, it's been touched on a little bit already, but the design element, just the fact that you get to kind of work muscles design wise and problem solve in different ways, because you are allowed all of the things that you get as a cosplayer, as well as all of the things you get as a historical costumer. So you kind of get like a lot more things to play with. So that's why I like it.
And what about you, Adrienne?
I totally agree. I got into costuming and sewing because of costume design, and I also studied a bit. So definitely the idea of giving yourself that challenge. What would this character be, do, wear, like how would they express themselves through fashion in this particular time period? Because you see that with both, you know, adaptations and stage plays where you take a known story and you put it into a different time period. And that's sort of what we're doing in our own way. And it's just kind of thinking about what makes sense for the character. How do you tell their story that's both familiar, but also works within the time period that you're trying to portray. It's really, really fun.
I never thought about it like that, but you're totally right. All right, Cindy.
I agree with everything that everyone's been saying with design and, you know, more freedom and creative stretching and all that. For me personally, I just really like research. I can totally get bogged down in the research part. And so if I have to research the character and also the historical area, yay, there's more research to do. And also, I think that sort of lends itself to putting in more like secrets for the people who will get it. You know, it's like Easter eggs in a costume. It's like, oh, okay, well, I see that you're dressed in, you know, this era, but like, oh, look, your fan, your accessory totally makes a nod to like this tiny aspect of the character. And so it's kind of, I don't know, like planting a treasure hunt for people who want to look for those little details and having people appreciate those details if they get both sides of the coin.
Very true. All right, Emilee, your turn.
It's kind of been talked about already a little bit, but I really also enjoy kind of the endless possibilities of mashing characters together with historical context. I think also for creators of color, it's really important because there is such a disparity of characters in pop culture and in media. So we have limited options already if we want to stay true to a specific character. And I think that was one thing that I really enjoyed about the build that I just made, was that Miles Morales, I've always loved Spider-Man, right? And Miles Morales was a representation of Spider-Man, who is a person of color, But in the context of gender bending and mashing it with a historical representation, I was able to make this design in collaboration with Gabriela Diaz, who's a Puerto Rican artist who illustrated the original design. And I was able to kind of marry it with my two favorite things, which is the pop culture aspect and also the historical aspect. And that kind of created, in a way, a new character that didn't exist, a variant of the character, if you will. And I think that's really beautiful because it kind of doubles your options. Or, I mean, really, I could do that character in every time period. It like gives me 10 options instead of one option, which cosplay would kind of be like, okay, you know, more so like do this spider suit or whatever. So I love the opportunities that it affords. And yeah, historically inspired is my favorite phrase.
Me too, 100%. I feel like basically I agree with everything that's already been said. I'm not sure I could say anything else, but I do feel like it's a little bit like anarchy. You know, you kind of push away from the rules and do your own thing and live in your own creative space while still paying homage to both sides. Now, let's move on to the next question. Tell us about your favorite cosplay you've done and why. We'll start with Casca.
Can I have two? Because I really can't decide between the first one that I did, which was H.R. Giger's alien-inspired Victorian walking suit. Because there was so many things in that project which I'd never done before. It was my first Victorian outfit, and getting to work out how I could make it look like alien. And so little things like the shape of the feather that's in the hat to make it look like the alien queen, and having like a little face hugger on the hat and doing like ribbing down the sides of the jacket and stuff. So I really love that one. But then I also really, really love my 1880s Trixie Mattel cosplay because it was just so much fun to wear, and it was so much fun doing the makeup. At the time, like one of the things that made me really want to do it was I'd seen so many like drag outfits that were like 1700s, the classic kind of rococo kind of thing. Like so many people have done it, but I hadn't seen anybody do a bustle before. So I was like, how can I incorporate a bustle into this outfit and make it drag, but also make it look very Trixie Mattel? So I had some 60s inspired stuff as well. So yeah, that was a really, really fun one to do.
That's awesome. Those are both fun. All right, Tiffany.
Thank you very much. Sort of my first jaunt into that historical side of things, like Knights as well, from women's, taking from the, and then I immediately myself into Victorian late bustle with my Donald Duck, which I think to date is my all-time favorite outfit I've ever made. Round, fun, but it's so deep heavy, and that's part of why I liked it so much. It tested me on it tested my ADHD focus and do all of those that really make the outfit pop. Even just like thinking so I did Donald Duck from Kingdom Hearts 3. So if people are familiar with that look, he has like on his outfit. Figure out how to make a zipper there. So it's like, how did I do the trim and like adding tassels, and wanted the feeling of that without actually metal zippers. Technically they were invented at that point. So it was a really fun challenge in fitting and trim work, and encourage people to have a bust point because it's just fun to run around in.
I feel like all my favorite eras have bustles, like late 17th, late 18th, late 19th. It's all about the bustle.
It's like big skirt support run around in. They're so fun.
All right, Maggie, what about you?
I was just trying to think about it, and I kind of think that Winifred Sanderson is kind of the first true historical cosplay that I've done, which seems difficult to believe, but I think that's true. And, you know, in typical fashion, I just went big and then I went home for 2 years. So like it was, first of all, I like doing groups, and it had been a long time since I was able to do a group. So I was really excited to get the other two sisters in there with me. And I was able to incorporate a lot of new techniques that I wanted to learn, such gold work was kind of the super big one. That's sort of obviously a big part of that build. But the other one was ventilating wigs, because that had been on my list of things to learn how to do for a really long time. So that, for that reason, I was glad to be able to finish that build finally and cross that off my list, get some new skills under my belt. I guess shoes was another thing that I hadn't done a lot of before. A little bit of sculpting and casting, but I don't know. The bad thing is that finally completing it now, I don't know that I'll ever do another non-historical cosplay because it was so much fun. So, but I'll definitely have to wear this one a lot more to get. It took so long that I have to like get more use out of it. So we're gonna milk this one for a while for sure.
I feel like that's the thing. You spend all of this time and all of this money and effort on something to wear it a couple of times. You gotta like get as much use out of it as possible. All right, what about you, Miss Casey?
Well, I can say for one thing is you can expect us at C2E2 every year for like a decade to be Hocus Pocus, because it's just the most fun. Like, I haven't ever done a group like that before. And oh my God, it changed my life. That being said though, Sarah Sanderson isn't my favorite historical piece I've made. Because something had to come before that for me to be able to do Sarah. I did an 1850s Ariel's purple ball gown from the second movie. And honestly, like most of it was really easy, but I gave myself a really weird, difficult technical challenge of digitizing like using an image of a extant garment and digitizing lace for it. So I pulled it up into my embroidery software and sat there like stitch by stitch, like getting these shapes, and it was lace. It's not even like embroidery. I made lace. But I had to learn how to take a flat image of a garment, of an embroidery on a garment, and learn how to digitize it and then stitch it out and make sure that the proportions were all right and everything. And I had to basically learn how to do that. And then I implemented it into Sarah to make the fabric for her pink bodice, because the fabric in the movie is embroidered. And I was like, of course I'm going to embroider it. Of course, there's only 1 yard of this color that I bought 5 years ago that I'm not going to be able to buy more of. So of course I'm going to embroider it and hope that I do it right the first time. But I think that was why I liked that Ariel so much, is because I pushed myself to learn a new technique so that I could create something that doesn't exist anymore. And now that I can digitize embroidery on old gowns, I'm screwed. I'm gonna be at the computer a lot. Let's just say that. I'm gonna be sitting around a lot, stitch by stitch.
You just blew my mind, like digitizing lace. That's incredible. That is so cool. All right, Adrienne, what about you?
It's really hard to choose, but I think definitely my favorite is my 1740s Elizabeth Swan. It's one of those like kind of 2 years in the making projects as well that I think I'm done with it. I think maybe I want to add something more, but it's kind of full circle. Elizabeth Swan was the character and the costume in the first Pirates that got me into sewing. I saw that and was like, I want to learn how to make that. I want to wear that dress. And so I had that, classic simplicity pattern, bought some way too heavy, thick upholstery fabric with the weird mushroom sleeves and all, and, you know, polyrigiline boning. I still have that dress somewhere because I can't bear to part with it. But, you know, surprised me as little young me to learn that they didn't have center back zippers back then. I was very, you know, I was very offended that Simplicity would have that in the pattern. And I was determined to learn how that dress was supposed to actually be made. And so through all the years of just kind of doing research and learning more and more and more about the historical methods and layers, and then to finally build the piece from all the way from the inside out, from the shift, the stays, and on all of the shapewear and into the gown itself, and then the embroidery. So definitely most proud of that one.
That's awesome. All right, Cindy.
I think my favorite, if I had to pick one, because like they're all my favorite, I would say my Weaver Girl. So the Weaver Girl is a character from Chinese mythology. And so that was like a year-long project that I did where I was trying to work in, like, it was the first year of the pandemic. So I was working in like all my feelings about like missing people, because like missing her husband is like a huge part of the Weaver Girl's story. Like she's separated from her husband except for one night a year. And so I was like working in like all these feelings of missing my family, you know, like and then, you know, because of the pandemic, there's a lot of anti-Asian racism that was on the uptick. And so like trying to put in like aspects of like Western dress, but also like Chinese historical dress, and like work all of this together into this one costume piece that would be like, here's all my feelings about 2020 in a costume. And so like the beading that went into the corset, and like, you know, doing all the research for like, how do I get this sort of like celestial maiden look, but also have it be wearable and like move aroundable, but also like all the nods to the character. It was like putting together all the things that I love, which is like a ton of research, you know, synthesis of a bunch of different areas, and then nitpicky beading, you know, very detailed handwork. So yeah, that's probably my favorite.
It's incredible. It's all about the details. That's what makes everything fun. All right, Emilee, your turn.
I'm back with a different cat. This is Iris. I'll have a different cat for each of my answers. This is Iris. she would like to be part of the panel. I think my favorite is probably Angelica Schuyler from Hamilton. It's not the most intense build that I've done, but I think it was like such like a heart and soul connection for me to make it, because Hamilton is obviously such a groundbreaking production to hit Broadway. There's not really anything that's ever been done like it before. And it, you know, was really impactful for me, and I just loved it. I'm a theater kid. I grew up doing musical theater since 3rd grade, you know, through college. And so musicals have always been something that I love. And to be able to see that representation on stage was just like such a wow moment. And then I found that fabric, this pink fabric, at a thrift store for like $5. And the minute I saw it, I was like, that's the exact color pink. And it's enough fabric to actually make something, but it's the exact color pink of Angelica's dress. And it was just such a aha moment. And it actually took me like 2 years or a year and a half after getting the fabric for me to actually make the dress. And then on the inside of the dress, because I was like, how can I translate this love of a musical into a physical garment? I took, each panel has a different Hamilton song, all the lyrics handwritten out on this is on the inside of the dress, so you can't see this. So it looks like a very simple, I mean, it's a pink dress, right? It's like whatever. But I love all those little things that I know about, that I'm like, when I'm wearing the dress, no one else can see that, but I'm like essentially carrying the music with me as I'm wearing the dress. And that I really, really loved that. And it was also great because Hamilton found the dress through social media, and they put it up on their social media platforms. It was like on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And that was like wild. I've never had anything that big happen before. Obviously, they have millions of people that follow them. And I also shout out to girl with the blue hair who shot those photos, because amazing job with, they're just beautiful photos. So I don't know, the whole experience was just, it was just such a well-rounded experience, and it just made me really happy.
That's incredible. That's so cool. I think for me, I'm pretty new to historical costuming in general. I also have a theater background and got my start doing theater costumes, and kind of went straight to cosplay. And so I've really only done 2 straight historical cosplays, but the last one I finished, like a lot of you, it was a year in the making, and it was David Bowie Goes Rococo. And I took, 1773 David Bowie and put him in 1773. Yeah, 1973, 1773. There we go. But I built the whole kit from the ground up, because I knew I didn't have anything. I didn't have any 1770s things except a pair of stays, and so and they didn't fit me. So I knew I had to do all of it. So why not make it all themed? And so the pockets, the under petticoats, the pannier that I built, like all of it was David Bowie themed. And I think because I had to learn so many new skills, and all of the details, and my stays that are reversible, they're the mullet stays, they're business in the front and party in the back, just the experience of learning all of that while creating this thing, like it was a really cool experience, and definitely one that I want to take a break from, because it was a lot, but I really enjoyed doing it. Okay.
I'm just gonna pop in because I think one of the things about doing more historical cosplay is that it really found for myself, it really elevates my sewing, and because there's so many details, there's so much that like fitting and things, like I did for years, and I was sewing for years before historical sewing, and within the past like 3-4 years, my skill set, how I make, is so much was for all the a lot of just like straight cosplay. That just comes down to taking all that time and really and merging that research and kind of like extra time that historical standpoint really adds to.
Agreed. I feel like I've become such a better maker just by doing a couple. And I also feel like, I don't know if y'all feel this way too, but I think that in doing all of the historical things, I've learned a lot of not just skills, but also just practices that you can put into everyday life. And the cosplay, all of it, the practicality of historical clothing, making it fit your size, no matter what your size is, and that kind of thing really is something that I've learned that I can apply to everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the same experience. I mean, back when like I was younger, back in my clubbing days, I started making corsets like specifically for the clubs and stuff. So they were all patent leather and UV reactive and stuff. But they never really fit me very well, because I was just going from a commercial pattern and not really changing it. And it was only when I started getting into like the historical costuming side that I learned how to make a proper corset. And that's kind of elevated all of my costuming now, because I've got the proper undergarments that actually fit me and feel comfortable.
That's one of the fun things about just costuming in general, is that we're taking all of these skills that we're learning from different aspects of making costumes. So historical costuming is going to be different than those of us who've had sort of like theatrical costuming versus fashion sewing versus couture sewing. Like it's all different skills that we can put in our sewing toolbox and then pull out the one that works best for whatever project we're doing down the road. And there's no rules. It's whatever works for you best in that moment. And so historical costuming is sort of like added a whole new round of those sorts of skills that I can pull out, which is kind of fun.
I think even beyond the skills, it's even the entire mindset of like, I'm gonna figure it out. Like this, I don't know how this is gonna work. No one's ever done this particular combination before, but I'm gonna make it work. And I feel like that mindset is really helpful for a lot of things in life. Like, you know what, we can do it. It's never been done, but we can do it, you know?
I agree with all of that. Emilee?
I was gonna just one other thing just to add to that is I think also it's great to have if you do various historical time periods, you can acquire skills that compound into cosplays. For instance, like the bodice of the dress that I'm making now is a bodice that's inspired by like Victorian times, but the skirt that I'm making that I'm pairing it with is going to probably be more something like late 18th century or something. I haven't figured out the whole design yet, but I just noticed that I'm pulling things from completely different time periods and kind of marrying them together in order to make this design, because the design was created by an AI machine, and so like there's no context for, like there's no like actual here's how you would make this, or it doesn't follow any rules. And so I have to just come up with how to make it. And I've noticed that I'm like, oh, well, I remember this time period, you know, connects to this, and I'll be using corsetry probably even on the Victorian bodice. I'm going to probably have corsetry in the back, or that would be something late 18th century. So it's going to be all these different elements, but as you work your way through historical cosplays or costuming, you pick up these little tidbits and skills from each one that you can put together, because that's how fashion actually, I mean, we don't think about it that way, but like that's how fashion evolves. And a lot of times you think of like things for current day and you're like, oh, that's that, but you don't think about how did we get here. And I love that visibility of like when you're learning decade by decade, then you're like, oh, okay, this makes more sense, how to do these things and put them together. So really, I think it's just beneficial for anyone who wants to make costumes in general. But yeah, super fun to just pick and choose what you want once you have that, like that knowledge.
Yeah, jumping off of that, I've actually found that it's easier to break down some of these really cool, like animated ball gowns that we see, like the artist Sakizo. When I made the one that I made, the only one that I've made so far, I pulled from like, you know, obviously 18th century, but then you can also do like, there was bustled areas. So I looked at bustle skirts. How do they tie up the bustles to make them look like that? You know, for the sleeves, 1830s plumpers, like, let's go. Like you just start to get a vocabulary in your head. And when you look at something, you see all of the underpinnings. And I love that about being able to like do like what you learned from historical, you can directly apply it to some of these really cool, weird cosplays that we're seeing, or these like art, these pieces of art, like you said with the AI, like, yeah, I love that.
I love all of this. Y'all make me so happy. All right. So how do you choose an era for your character? Or do you choose an era and then choose a character to do that era with? And we'll start again with Casca.
For me, it's kind of a mixture of both, really. It depends. Because I know that like with the Trixie one, I had an idea in my mind that I wanted to do Victorian. But then, for example, when I did my Starlight outfit, it was very much, I want to do a Starlight cosplay. What era would work for that? And I ended up settling on Edwardian. And I mainly settled on Edwardian because I hadn't, it was a combination of I hadn't done anything Edwardian before. And also through looking through Delineator magazine, I was seeing some interesting things with the shirtwaists, which I was thinking could kind of mimic stars. So there was that. And then another example would be when I did Ratcatcher. I just felt that pairing her with DC Bombshells, which was like wartime, would work so well. Like it needed to be done. I think sometimes you get something in your head where you're thinking this needs to happen. Yeah, so you just like some things just seem to pair really, really nicely.
I can agree with that. All right, Tiffany.
It can go either way. Sometimes it's with knowing the Aziraphale from Good Omens. I was like, I really want to make, but I want to do it a little bit historical than like modern. So I took inspiration from his costume in the show. Like, so I was like, you know, and fits great. I can make that beautiful skirt. The jacket will move really. It felt really fitting. Donald Duck was kind of the same way. Just my friend was like, well, what would you do? And I was like, obviously bustle. Look at the like that. Just they right hand in hand. But then sometimes it's like, well, I really want to do time period. So like what fitting to me. So a couple of my future plans, I really want to do a evil split color dress and do Spider-Man. Right? So like that just feels right to me. So it was like I can easily make it like because like well in my head. And I also want to do earlier giant ball gown, like the huge hoop skirt. I'm looking at Princess Peach, the giant skirt, like that all like so sometimes it's I really and then there's characters that I really like that and then sometimes it's I want where can I go? But I agree with Casca is like sometimes they just fit together and you're just like it was meant.
Very true. All right, Maggie, your turn.
Yes, all of that. Basic silhouettes that already exist for the character because you want people to be able to tell what it is, right? That's the most important thing. So if you're going to be changing a cosplay character into a historical character, it still needs to have those super obvious elements so that people can look at it and be like, oh my gosh, right? And they just like get it immediately. You don't want to be like, that it kind of looks familiar, but I don't really know. So kind of matching silhouettes is helpful, or matching if they have an accessory that then directly translate to something that has been seen historically, that can really help that. I get all my best ideas at like 2 a.m. So, and usually they're like, oh yeah, and then that, and then that, and then that. And then hopefully you remember it in the morning is always the trick. Or sometimes it seems a much better idea at 2 a.m. and then you wake up and you're like, no, too much. But yeah, I think it kind of depends, like what everyone said about, it can go both ways for sure.
A lot of what has been said, but I think I'm very much the person, I just want to put everything in Rococo. I'm just like, how's it going to look with a peigne? Let's see. Oh, that doesn't fit. How about a Victorian Gothic outfit? Oh, that doesn't fit. So now I got to find something else. But for reals, like, I kind of think about an era first. Like, I really want to make 1890s, and I love What We Do in the Shadows, and not just already like 1890s. So I was like, well, I don't have to make undergarments, but I'm going to because I want to learn. And then I can think about all the characters that I can put on top of these 1890s undergarments. So that's kind of how I work. I just pick an era, and then I'll probably stay in it for a year or two, and then I'll move on.
Cool. What about you, Adrienne?
Some of it is definitely inspired by the character, so sometimes I don't go very far off from what the clear like inspiration is. For example, Elizabeth Swann, she's set in the 18th century already, but then I looked at the elements and then looked at the history and be like, well, what's the closest? Like, what was the costume designer clearly drawing from? Where then she made changes. So I'm sort of like going backwards and be like, okay, if I really grounded it in history, what would it look like? Same with my medieval AON, like you can't really see all of it under there, but I have like 10th century like trousers because that made sense to me for her character. Because I think in the movie she's just wearing leggings because you can't see them. But I was like, well, if she's going to be riding horses, she's going to have a wide seat. She's going to have trousers. Her codardy is going to be split front so she can get on the horse, and just like little elements like that. But then sometimes it's just really random and fun. I did a group historical cosplay where we all really loved Sailor Moon, and we all had never done medieval before. So we're like, let's make medieval Sailor Scouts just because. So it's really fun. Like, it was kind of silly, you know, we had our little, like, our wigs and our tiaras, but then we were all wearing, you know, surcoats and stuff. And then elements worked out, like, you know, Lauren, my friend, did Venus, and she had the Venus Love Me chain, which works really well for like medieval belts. Sometimes the elements just lend themselves, right?
Agreed. What about you, Cindy?
I think the way that I do historical cosplay is probably a little bit different with the silhouettes, because almost all of my historical cosplays have been taking like modern, generally like American pop culture characters and then putting them into like Chinese historical drama, like fantasy outfits. And so like there's no matching of silhouettes there, and the silhouette's totally different. But the way I bring in the character is usually with the colors. So like last year I did or actually Adrienne was in a group with me where we did Disney princesses, but all in like Asian traditional clothing. And so I wanted to do a Song Dynasty inspired Ariel. And so I kind of matched like the color per top and the color per skirt, but then, you know, thinking about like, well, what kind of accessories would make sense? Well, they love painting fishes on fans, so I'm going to paint Flounder on the fan. Or, you know, well, you have to have jewelry, so her jewelry is all going to be pearls because that makes sense if she's a mermaid, and her hairpiece is going to look like coral. You know, so trying to work in those, like I said before, like Easter eggs there, even if the silhouette is totally different. So, you know, making nods to the characters mostly through color and accessories.
I love that. I loved all of that. Was so gorgeous. It was awesome. All right, Emilee, your turn.
I actually pretty much always choose a character, and then I find out what I want to do with that character, because for me, cosplaying is a very like emotion-based craft, more than a technical craft. I'm more drawn to the emotions of it. So and that's a reason that I do a lot of nostalgia also, because if I have that emotional bond to a character, then I can finish it. And if I don't, and I have tried to do characters that I don't have that bond with, I just think they're cool. And I've never finished one of those cosplays because I don't have the push to finish it. And I think, yeah, it really does go back to emotions, and that's kind of led me down on the one side to stick with character. Like with Hamilton, I didn't vary very much. Like, I mean, I kept the same time period and everything like that, but it can vary with other cosplays as well. I'm like trying to think of some that I've altered maybe, but I don't know. I think mostly, like other people have said, it's also like what feels right here for them. But I think actually a lot of my historical cosplays are characters who already exist within some kind of historical context, whether that's Hamilton or Bridgerton or I think of who else, with the exception of Miles Morales, which that was an illustration, which is so funny. I have to tell a story. So the reason I ever found out about that was, and this is a really good, I think, thing for people to hear who do cosplays and stuff. I made a TikTok video and I said, literally the whole video was just like a 7-second long video. It was like, hey, if you make historical cosplays and you are a person of color, please comment on this video because I want to follow you and I want us to be able to connect. And somebody who commented on that video was Gabriela Diaz, who I ended up working with. And she was like, I don't make historical cosplay. She's like, but I love historical representation. And if you want to check out my art, like, you know, you can find it on my page. So I went through her, I just went to her art page and I was like scrolling through her Instagram. And as soon as I saw the illustration, I was like, no way. Like, how does that? It just clicked immediately. And it does have to do also with that being one of my favorite time periods, late 18th century. I was like, no way. And she drew that in January, and I didn't put that video out until like May or June or something when I started that build. So sometimes the universe just provides, you know, sometimes you choose it. But I love that story because it literally was a random person from the internet. And she, when she was drawing, if you go back and look through her Instagram stories, as she's drawing the illustration for that Miles Morales outfit, she's posting, like, her captions are like, I know no one wants to see this. This is the mashup nobody asked for. Like, not in a bad way, but just in a like, she was just following her truth, but like no one like prompted her to do that. And I think that's a really good lesson for creatives. So like when you feel that draw and pull and tug, like just do it, because you don't know who, because when I saw it, I was like, no way. Like, how did you like get into my brain and make that? Because I can't draw. And so it was just wild that that came out of her being in just a place of like, I'm just gonna do this because it feels right. And then it translated into me finding it months later, right? So like months later, I'm finding it, and then I created it. And then when I was even competing last night, I had somebody come up to me and say, I'm Puerto Rican, and this meant so much to me to see this representation up on stage that I'm actually going to go get it tattooed now. And it based an inspired tattoo based off of the illustration. So now that art, it's like the art is continuing and continuing and continuing to inspire other creatives and other people who are interested in creativity and art. And it's just like such a great lesson, I feel like, to really like follow your truth, because you never know. You really never know where it's going to lead.
I think what you said too is really important, is like having a connection to the character or the costume in some way, because there's so many pieces to more historical inspired that like if you don't have that connection, you're not going to necessarily finish it, or like it's going to get really tedious. Especially like if you decide to go really heavy in the details, like you need that love and that like want to do it and just to really enjoy it, because going into a more historical side of sewing, there's a lot more steps and a lot more pieces to it that, like, as we've all said, most of our outfits have been like long projects. They're not like super fast turnaround, because we all are talking about like the undergarments and the pieces and the like design and like the details. And so you really do, I agree with you, you have to have a connection to the character and at least the costume itself in some way to get through it.
Emilee, what an incredible story. Like, that's such an awesome thing. And I love that. Like, and yeah, awesome. That, yeah, okay. Now I'm not making any sense, but that's okay. For me, I think I'm with everyone else. Like, it really depends on the project. Like, I just did Medieval Maleficent, and it just kind of lent itself to it because, you know, of all of the Disney films, I feel like the animated Sleeping Beauty was so heavily inspired by the time period, and, you know, it wasn't a far hop. And if you look at that costume, like it's just, I mean, I could walk out in my medieval Maleficent costume and nobody would think, oh, that's historical. They just think it's, oh, it's Maleficent, right? Whereas for the Bowie thing, I had these 1770 stays, and I was like, well, this is a good starting point for me. So what can I do in the 1770s that isn't going to be a huge process? See how that turned out. But there was this jumpsuit that David Bowie wears, designed by Kansai Yamamoto, and it's like, it's black and it's got stripes, white stripes, and it's just huge. It's just a silhouette. It just looked like a pannier, and so it was perfect. It just, this is how it happened. So I think I'm in agreement with everybody where it just kind of depends. And that's part of the fun of it, you know, going on that journey and seeing what speaks to you at that point in time. All right, so we have one more kind of talking point that I want to talk about, and that is, you know, what advice do you have for people who are just starting out? How do you get into historical cosplay? Like, how do you start? Are there any resources you recommend? Any eras you would recommend starting with? Any kind of advice or practical points that you have for beginners? And I'm going to mix it up this time because I just want to be evil, and I'm going to start with Emilee.
As promised, I have a new cat for the, no, this is Freya again. I just go in between them, I guess. Actually, I have 3 cats, so we might see a third one, who knows? Little Easter eggs in this. Let's see, starting points. You know, I always say to people that, like, if you have an idea, like, sometimes grit is what's going to get it done. I love the romantic, like, have a community and have, you know, go find a Facebook group and go find, but the reality is, if you don't push yourself to finish something, it's not going to happen, no matter how many Facebook groups are inspirational and how many. And I think sometimes we get like resource overload, and we've joined all the groups and we've followed all the hashtags. And what actually happens is that we get so overwhelmed with input. I'm actually really thankful because I started doing cosplay before I ever got on social media, because social media can actually be a bad thing because you just get information overload. So if you have an idea, find a way to get it done and use those communities to maybe ask questions or to learn more. But I would not say, don't wait for a community to inspire you to do something, is what I have to tell people a lot, because you will be sitting there for 5 years, you know, waiting for the right inspiration. But as far as resources, I guess I'll give a self plug for myself, because I actually lead sew-alongs, which are free, totally free resources for people who are interested in making historical garments. We run them every couple of months. Well, there's the third cat. She just fell off the windowsill. She's a kitten, she'll recover. So the sew-alongs are every few months. I took the summer off from sew-alongs because I have to moderate them, and I was competing this summer. So I just can't be everywhere at once, but we're going to be back in October doing corsets again. And what we do is we all work through the same pattern at the same time, and we discuss the pattern through Discord. So every week there's like we call them owls, or our weekly lessons, which are also like, they're like weekly challenges, or however you want to say it. And it'll be like, okay, so this week we're going through steps 1 through 5 of the pattern. So finish that in this week. And normally I try to keep it to a time commitment of 5 to 10 hours. And then each week, if you're building, you know, if you do complete it, then by the end of the month, you'll have a finished product. And we've done cloaks, we've done corsets, are definitely the most popular one, because corsets can be very intimidating, of course. We've done like historically inspired aprons, we've done pockets. Yeah,
Emilee's Discord and sew-alongs are excellent. So
they're
other
great.
plug from me.
I feel inspired by them because we have people that have been sewing 20 years, and we have people who, like, it's their first project they've ever made. And so what happens is, within the Discord, everyone can be giving feedback to everyone else. And like,
It's
even with
really nice.
Yeah, even with the, like, if there's a bad, like, not to throw shade, but if there's like a difficult part of the pattern, that you normally would be like, why did they write this like that? You can talk it through with everyone else. And sometimes people are more ahead. So like, if I'll finish, because I'm a procrastinator, at the end of the week, but some people get done at the beginning of the week with those 5 steps or whatever it is per week. And they'll be like, hey guys, watch out for step number 4. I did not understand it, but here's how I figured it out. And then literally, like, you know, 50 other people now know how to do that step. So I think it's a beautiful resource. I've dreamed about it for a very long time. And then I finally reached the decision that, like, I have to start it. I tried to find this community for so long, and then I reached the point where I was like, oh, I have to do it. So here we are a year later, and I really suggest signing up for that. The registration isn't open yet, but it will be in September for the October so long. And we're going to be making like cottagecore / I guess if you're going to say historical wise, it'd be like late 18th century corsets. So that's my own plug for my own thing, but I think it is a really great resource because, like I said, even I feel inspired by it. So yeah, more information on that to come.
I was gonna plug you if you didn't, so.
Okay. I you know what? Sometimes that's what it takes. It takes a village. You know, you got to have that community plug in, and because everyone's working through the same exact pattern in the same time period, it's also kind of a peer pressure thing because like I have ADHD. I get distracted by things all the time, but I'm like, I have to post each week what I've been working on, so I have to finish it. So the peer pressure thing gets me done. Whatever works, whatever works.
Well, I know what I'm doing in October. Not that I need another pair of stays, but yes, I do. I need another pair of stays. That's awesome. All right, I am going to continue working backwards and go to Cindy next.
I think everyone could say, you know, the usual things like, oh, you know, find the Reader's Digest sewing book or whatever. Like that I did read the Reader's Digest sewing book like cover to cover before I started sewing anything. But one thing that I found really helpful was like making social media work for you, which sounds like a horrible seminar. Make social media work for you. But I think it's it can be such a gift that you can connect with sort of like very experienced, like big time makers and ask them questions about their process. And, you know, generally, as long as you're polite and, you know, not demanding like personal private lesson, you know, they're happy to answer questions. You know, I think about like, you know, when I was working on my Aowen build and I just like messaged Silhouette Cosplay and I was like, hey, can you answer this question about this one aspect of your Aowen build? And she was like the nicest person and she like answered all my questions. And I'm like, oh, okay, like you'll talk to me. And then, but you know, at the same time, I've had people ask me like, how did you make this part of your, you know, Ariel costume? And I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you about this book that tells you like, that has all the different eras of Chinese historical costuming all in one book, and it has like all the diagrams and everything. And like I was happy to share what I could of my resources. And so I think, you know, having that access to people who have done a lot more and you know, had a lot of experience, like you can make use of that in a good way, you know, as long as you're not like, you know, expecting Bernadette Banner to answer you personally or something. But a lot of people are willing to talk shop.
Yeah, and I feel like, because I did a lot of that, reaching out to people when I first started, and you know, it's definitely like the huge big names might not always respond to you, but you know, there are a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge that are eager and happy to share with you. So just don't be shy about it, and don't be discouraged if you hear back from somebody, or if you don't hear back from somebody. You know, everybody's busy, so but you should not be afraid to reach out.
But if you are going to reach out, put your specific questions in your message and not just a hey, because no one will respond to a hey, or they're not your best friend. But if you have specific questions, put it in there, and like most of the time you'll get an answer, unless it's some like really assumptive question that like, it's like, don't ask for all of their research, just hand it to you, but you can ask like specific questions about a skill or a piece. But just don't just, hey, creators, please, just an overarching message.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Get to the point, because like I said, we're all busy, right? We're all, you know, we all have a gazillion things going on. And so if you get to the point right off, they're probably more likely to respond to you than if you send them your life story and then get to your question 3 paragraphs in. I'm guilty of that. I'm long-winded. All right, let's move on to Adrienne.
To agree, definitely community reaching out, especially with social media. There's so much easier access to resources now. I just think about when I started, I knew no one who sewed or did historical, and so I just sort of learned through mistakes. And so I think that's my biggest advice, is to not be afraid to make mistakes. And you're not going to get it right the first time. I mean, you might, which is amazing, but like I don't. And this is also something I keep reminding myself, because I get really scared of getting it wrong, but there's not really one wrong way. For example, I was recently trying to figure out how I wanted to bind the tabs of my stays, or not just the tabs, but just bind my 18th century stays. And I did a survey of people, and there were so many different methods of binding it. And then, like Emilee said, I kind of got overwhelmed. I was like, oh, wait, which one's the right way? But there isn't a right way. So I just had to pick one and go with it. And if I don't like that technique, I won't use it next time, and I'll try a different one. Yeah, and then specifically for historical cosplay is if you are doing something that's very silhouette based, really dive in. You don't have to be historically accurate at all and follow everything, but having the knowledge of how the original garments were sort of either supported or created lets you then have the freedom to branch out from there.
Her statements, 100%. All right, Casey.
So I have a mantra that I've put into my studio the last 2 years, and it's changed the game for me. It's perfection is the enemy to progress. So I stopped trying to do everything perfect. I do, I have an 80% rule. Is it 80? Will 80% of the people be able to tell that I'm in the 1890s? Will 80% of this costume fit in? Am I somewhat adequate? Like, is it good enough? And implementing that kind of mentality has allowed me to just throw my hands up and be like, you know what? I'm gonna have to tea-dye this, and that's just that. Like, that's it. It's not gonna be the right color. It's not gonna be the right thing. But like, guess what? It's going to look good. It's going to look pretty. And that's what matters. So I've putting that mentality in when I now go and I plan. I will research. I will find paintings. I will find whatever inspires me and makes me feel like, oh yeah, like, oh, this makes me really want to work on it and makes me really excited for it. And I'll kind of be okay if it's, if I'm mixing this jacket for this character with this skirt, and I'm, like I've got this specific sleeve, and I'm not necessarily focused on perfect, accurate all of the time. And that to me, like, that will change, that will allow you as a creator and as an artist and as a new person in this historical space to be okay with like being good enough. Because like we're not trying to be, recreators or reenactors or like living history museum people. Like, we're just really trying to have fun. And I think that when you start with the fun, everything else will just fall into place. My second thought is Google and YouTube are your very, very best friend. If you have a question about, I don't know how to make 1780s stays, if you Google or you put into YouTube, just go straight to YouTube, skip the blogs. They're great, but like go straight to the videos. How to make 1780s stays. I'm sure you're going to find somebody that has done it. Or if there's a specific pattern you're using, or even if you see something pretty, like, you see like a great example. If you saw Emilee's Miles costume, like that gown, like read what she did, like go through her feed and like go, oh, okay, these are the stays you made. These are the things, this is the pattern you used, and then research those things so that you can then decide, is this going to fit my project? And if it's not, that's okay. But guess what? You just learned so much stuff just because you found something that inspired you and you went down the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole is good in this case, I promise. But like, that's how I started. Like I found Angela Clayton and I literally read every blog article she wrote, every single one. And this was in 2015. I just went down the rabbit hole, and then I found the costumes or the eras that I liked, and then I went down that rabbit hole, and here I am, kind of sort of obsessed with historical costumes, and like it's great. So that's the best way to start.
And in terms of a book, Casey, plug your book.
Yes, please. So I have a really cool thing in my book. I have a glossary at the end of it that actually has broken down terms of a lot of the undergarments for you. So if you're like, I don't know what a peignet is, I will tell you. I got you. I got you, boo. This is not a historical reference. I do give you as much history as 144 pages, with 50% of them being images and 11 projects allows. But honestly, it's a really good jumping off point, and I wrote it, and it's cool. So thank you. Sorry, I would have never pitched my book if you had told me to do that. Thank you.
I'm pitching for everybody.
And as an aspiring fiction writer over here, like getting a book published, y'all, like just hands down, bow down, freaking awesome. So cool. And Maggie, who had to leave us, also has some books.
I was just gonna say, I might have it right here. I have it. I do. I have her stencils, but she has a book on smocking and stencils. She's great. I will say I will never write another book. And if another person asks me about all these undergarments I've been making, if they're for a second book, the answer is no. I am not an author. I like making videos. I do not like writing, but I did it. So
You did it. Yeah. Good. I'm glad we plugged Maggie's book as well. Make sure we plug everything for everybody. Because it's really useful.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that I link to everything in the description below. So viewers, if you're watching this, anything that you're curious about, I will have all of the information in the description, so you can check it out there.
Perfect.
And Tiffany.
Beautiful. I, like Casey, have a version of that phrase in my life, which is perfection is the enemy of done. And so the point, I start these projects, right? The point is I want to finish them. I want to make them. And if I'm so worried about it being so perfect, I'll never get to that point. And I like to run around at them. Like, I love the journey, but I like to run around at them. So that's always kind of my phrase, which is just a different version of Casey's. Which is, yeah, let perfection go. It doesn't live here. It's not helpful. But in terms of kind of actual resources, I think if you were working on a very specific character, those kind of like Facebook groups can be really useful. Once you're shifting into more of the historical side of things, it can get a little dicey how useful they are. But I definitely think looking for those resources is really nice. But I do agree with Emilee is that sometimes there's too much research and it will stop you from just doing the thing. So honestly, the Miss Frizzle phrase of take chances, make mistakes, get messy is a very accurate one for costuming as well. And my other thing is it's okay to use patterns. You do not have to draft from scratch. I almost never draft from scratch, and I've been sewing for close to like 15 years now. So I know there's a ton of amazing YouTube and blogs where they're drafting out the patterns or like scaling up from like patterns of fashion. You don't have to do that. Don't start there unless you super duper want to. It's okay to use a pattern. That's my big soapbox. Is like, I think a lot of times, especially in sort of the historical realm of things, people can get a little snooty on the pattern front, but like, don't worry about it, you guys. You can, if you want to win cosplay contests, you can do it working from patterns. I did it. Like Casey will tell you, she was one of my judges. You can do it from patterns. It's okay. And there's a ton of amazing patterns out there for historical stuff. And then my only other advice is pay attention to your undergarments, pay attention to structure, because so much of what makes these outfits look amazing is the structure holding them up. And if you love medieval, check out the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism. You can dive down anything you want that's pre like 1500s with them, and everyone will tell you anything you want to know. So yeah, community can be really great. It can get overwhelming. Grab a pattern and start is really my best advice.
Yeah, I have a degree in clothing and textile design, and I refuse to make my own patterns. I use commercial patterns where I'll alter them sometimes if it's not exactly what I want, but I pretty much always start with the base of a commercial pattern for accessibility reasons, but also because I have no desire to be a pattern maker. And you don't have to. You don't have to do that's the biggest misconception with, I think, new cosplayers, new creators, is you have to be good at everything or you have to enjoy everything. And it's like, absolutely not. I do not like makeup. I do not like wigs. I do not like making patterns. So I just don't. I buy my wigs. I do very basic makeup most of the time. Like, I'm not an SFX person. Everyone is drawn to different things, and that's okay.
And I caution new sewers, new cosplayers from falling into the trap of judging yourself against other people who are at a completely different stage in their journey. Like, don't start and do your very first project and judge yourself against like cow butt crunchies. Like, that's a different journey. It's a completely different skill, like place and things. But so like, just do your best to not judge yourself against all the big names that you see on social media, because it will get very discouraging. But you'll look back at your progress a year from now, 3 years from now, and you'll amaze yourself at what you've done. And you will suddenly, without even knowing it, you might be that person for someone else where they're looking at your work and wanting to do that. So like, just do your best to not fall into that trap. It's really hard, but I encourage you to not do it.
And remember, like, social media is it's a fallacy. You know, we do these pictures, we do these videos and all of this stuff, and in reality, the reality is not necessarily the image. And you know, somebody could have an amazing photo and they might not be wearing pants, but you can't tell. So, you know, don't judge yourself by that. Don't hold yourself to that expectation, right?
And this is why you need to attend my seminar, Making Social Media Work for You.
As somebody who is a photographer and does lots of photo editing, social media is definitely a lie. Most photos out there have been heavily photoshopped.
Or they have a friend standing behind them pinching their waist too. You know, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Safety pins. Safety pins.
Yeah, shout out to all my friends that are hidden in my those are just cropped out as they like. You know, we had a friend group at New York Comic-Con where we wanted everything to look flowy and magical. So me and another person were taking someone's dress on each side and throwing it up and running out of the picture for the shot.
I have one of those for my Aziraphale to get the skirt swoop. Yeah, it's like there's always someone off camera doing something.
I have been pinned to like lights before. Like Alex will, my best friend's my photographer, and she will literally safety pin my cape to one of her lights or to the backdrop. And I'll just be on a chair. And when she finishes, I am Shira riding a fiery, flamey horse, and it's great. But like, it's absolutely absurd in the real life. Like, people should not be attached to lights. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just a shout out to all of those good sports who are always there for us. You know,
the unsung hero of the cosplay world is like the handler, the friend, whoever will tell you that like, oh, your wig's slipping, like the unsung heroes.
All right, Casca, your turn.
I just want to echo what like other people have already said. There's so many communities out there on Facebook and Discord groups and stuff where there's going to be loads of people who are more than happy to give you advice, even just encourage you when you're having one of those days where you're like, oh, I've had to seam rip like half my outfit. Like that, it's great to just have people there to be like, I've totally done that too. It is fine. Like these things happen. Every sewist's best friend is their seam ripper. Like it doesn't matter how long you've been sewing for, it's right there within hand's reach. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is resources. It can be kind of overwhelming sometimes when you're thinking like, where do I even start? And there are plenty of free resources out there in the form of there's YouTube videos, like there's so many videos out there explaining how to do various things. And the Met Museum has got an archive full of fashion plates that you can look through to get inspiration. Archive.com has also got lots of books that you can read, and some of them with free patterns. And there's also things like the Delineator magazine where you can get loads of inspiration, and that is free to view. For patterns, there's also the Keystone Guide to jacket and dress cutting, which is free available. So yeah, there's plenty of resources out there. So even if you're short on cash, like I think there's a common misconception that you can only get into costuming and stuff if you're loaded, but that's really, really not true. Most of the stuff I get is secondhand. Like I raid charity shops and stuff. If I do need to buy fabric like new, I go on places like Pound Fabrics where literally you can get £1 a meter. So you don't need hundreds and hundreds and hundreds to get into this hobby.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can save money or secondhand or utilize things you don't think of. My favorite in the cosplay / historical world is zip ties for boning. It's always fun and it functions. So like you can cosplay on your budget, you can historical sew on your budget. So I'm with you. Yes.
I was going to suggest libraries as well. A lot of the times you can get library or get like the books that you would want to purchase or you think you have to purchase. Sometimes you can get them at your local library. Sometimes they're only in digital form, sometimes they're physical, but that's a really good resource and you can request books too. So they'll like actually order it for the library.
And I think there's like, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to that saying, yeah, when I first started doing Chinese historical costuming, there was only one book and it was like $500 used on Amazon. So I requested it from the library and they let me have a $500 book for 2 weeks. I returned it. I did. I promise.
You're a better person than me.
And so when you start like, what? Don't do this, you guys. But like, what would the point where the late fees like counter? Don't do that. Please return your books to the library.
I think they have like digital sharing too between libraries, and not necessarily just, you know, in your own town, but also internationally, or not nationally, let's say. Internationally.
Yeah, it's definitely go check your library because it depends on what services and things that they're signed up for. But yeah, Casey's totally right. And Cindy, check your library.
Save yourself $500. I'm gonna echo what everybody else has said. I know for me, like in 2009, I made a pair of stays out of a pattern, a butterick pattern, and I bought Patterns of Fashion One, and I opened it up and I paged through it a million times and I fell in love with it, and then I never started because I was so intimidated by the drafting process, by the scaling process. And it took a pandemic and me finding YouTube and this community to finally have the courage to start something that I've wanted to do almost my whole life. So my advice for everyone who wants to start is just do it. Don't be scared. Like everyone said, it's okay if you screw up. Pick a first project that is not precious. My David Bowie project was not precious. You know, I used $6 a yard cotton, you know, and not necessarily the right fabrics for the gown that I made, but it was what I could afford. And I did the thing and I'm happy with it. And I have learned so much and now I can move on to something nicer. Don't be intimidated. Reach out to your community. Don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money on your projects. You don't have to buy silk to do historical costuming or cosplay or anything. You know, use polyester, use what you can get, go to your thrift stores, buy your $1 a yard fabric. It's okay. Nobody should go up to you and be like, oh, is that polyester? You know, so
Never had it happen. I've never had it happen. So it's fine.
And if it does
Or if it
happen,
happens, oh,
I was gonna say, if it does happen, that's a really good moment for, like, if you are plugged into communities. That's the biggest thing with cosplay, I would say, historical or otherwise. Like, you need to have a couple friends, maybe even one friend who is also in the community, and you'll meet them as you continue making. But you need to have those friends who you can vent to, friends that you can talk to about not just the building process, but also instances like that. Because, like, I mean, sooner or later, someone's going to say something hateful towards you. It's sad that I have to say that, but I think it's important for people to have realistic expectations, especially if you're on social media. Someone's going to say something really mean to you someday. And, like, when they do, you have to, like, you need to go to your community and be like, you know, have that safe space to have those conversations and be like, this person just said this about me, so that they can remind you, like, first of all, like, what a sad place for somebody to come in and say that about somebody. Like, you have to realize it has nothing to do with you if somebody's saying something like that, because it doesn't. Like, if somebody's happy and healthy in their life, like, they would never go attacking somebody for something like polyester. But I have seen it happen in Facebook groups. So you do have to be aware that sometimes it does happen, but you have to just go back to your community space and your safe space and be able to kind of get that, like, mental refresher of, oh, okay, this has nothing to do with me. Obviously, this person has stuff going on.
I see it. I have seen it happen online, but, like, in person, I haven't seen that level of, like, snobbery. I guarantee that it happens, and I just have been fortunate. But I also am the person you take with you that will, like, come at anybody for you on a convention floor. Like, I'm not going to put up with it for others either. So it's good to have a friend like that with you.
That's how I feel too. I'm like, if somebody said that to my friend, I'd probably be in jail. But again, have those friends that will fight for you. Like, whether it's obviously not physical violence, you know, unless, I mean, if it happens, it happens. But, like, I mean, I'm not saying have somebody who will fight for you physically, but I'm saying, like, who will fight for you emotionally and mentally. Like, that is the way that you survive in this community. As a creative also, it's not even just cosplay. Like, you need people who will fight for your emotional and your mental well-being.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, for every one person who would say something, like, nasty, you've probably got about, like, 20-30 people behind you who are like, that's out of order, like, sticking up for you, that kind of thing.
I have a crossbow, so if anybody needs a little spanking, just let me know. I want to use it very badly.
Isn't that why they have you, like, piece tie your weapons so that you don't go after? No, but I was gonna say, like, if I were to ask somebody, like, is this polyester? It would be to follow that statement with, like, it's amazing what you did with, you know, like, not silk. Like this is your skill in, you know, being shown that you could make, like, you know, if you're paying like $200 a yard for silk, like, yeah, okay, but, like, of course it's gonna look amazing. But if you can make a tablecloth look great, like, you're cool. So That's why I would say, is it polyester? It's not because I'm trying to look down. It's because
The tone of the voice is very important in the question, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Is this polyester? Yeah, you got a problem with it? Yeah, don't be afraid. Just do it. It's cool. There's a lot of people out there that are just as nerdy as you are and so enthusiastic. I think that the most wonderful thing about me jumping into this community is how involved and enthusiastic and supportive everybody has been so far. We all love to do this thing, and so, you know, embrace that. All right, does anybody have any final thoughts they want to share with us? Anything they're excited about? Jokes?
I don't have a
I would
joke.
love if, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, can we do social media handles also at some point? I know with Casey, it's not in your description, so I don't know where to find you. And I want to see your book.
Go ahead, Casca, you were going to say something and then we'll do the plugging.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the most important kind of takeaways for like being in this kind of like costuming community and stuff like that is have fun. Like at the end of the day, have fun. Like if it's feeling like a chore, then put it to one side, leave it for a bit. It can go in the naughty pile for a while, get back to it again when you can have fun with it.
Yeah, I think have fun and don't force yourself to hit some made up schedule of when you have to have stuff made by, unless you like are doing that as a personal challenge. Social media has made people feel like they have to churn stuff out so fast, and it's more than okay to take months, years to work on stuff. It's okay. Just give yourself some grace.
All right, any other closing thoughts before we plug? No? All right, so Emilee, since you suggested it, why don't you start?
Yeah, like I said, you can find me on TikTok or Instagram. I almost said LinkedIn. Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter. Do not find me on LinkedIn, please. At our Shield Maiden. At our Shield Maiden. And yeah, I like I said, we'll have so longs coming up in October.
All right, Cindy.
you can find me on Instagram at @CatIonDesigns, and I have a sadly abandoned blog, but I used to keep really detailed dress diaries, but I haven't written it in a year.
Adrienne.
Wax sealed costumes across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. I also have a blog. Not super active, but I do have the tutorials that I have written up are all shared there. So yeah.
All right, Casey.
Yeah, so I'm Casey Renee Cosplay on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. I do upload like 2 to 3 times a month. I am about to finish Nadja from What We Do in the Shadows. I made all of the 1890s undergarments and it was really fun. I've just been having a lot of stupid fun with this one because you kind of have to. And then yes, my book is available on CaseyReneeCosplay.com, but it's also available on Amazon if you are not in the US. It is available in a lot of other countries as well. And that's it. That's me. Yeah.
And Tiffany.
I'm Tiffany. My YouTube is Rattle the Stars Studio, but my social media is nothing like that. So you can find me on Twitter and TikTok as @raccoonbee, all one word, and Instagram is raccoon_bee, because why would anything be the same anywhere? So yes, please come join along on the adventures. When I am making things, life has made it hard recently. I do like to post a lot of inside, like making things, progress shots. So I'm always happy to talk how things happen.
And Casca?
Yeah, so I'm crafting with Casca on YouTube, Miss Casca on Instagram, and Little Miss Casca on TikTok. Although I don't post on TikTok nearly as much as I should.
And on TikTok, that's like 30 times a day. That's what we should.
Yeah, the
There's no
TikTok
winning.
algorithm is like, live here.
Yeah, exactly. You should be here posting every minute of every day.
I have a TikTok. I have not actually used it yet because I'm so intimidated by how much you have to do. I'll get there eventually, but so I am Fantastical Follies Costuming here on YouTube. I'm also at Fantastical Follies on Instagram. That's all one word. I don't know what my TikTok handle is, so there's nothing on there anyway. And for Maggie, does anybody want to plug Maggie, or I can go ahead and pull all of the information up?
And glue, I believe, on all of the socials. Instagram and Twitter, I know for sure. And they have a YouTube. I don't remember if they have any other socials from there, but it should be Paisley and Glue everywhere.
TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
There you go.
And PaisleyandGlue.com, and I think you can find all the books there too. So check them all out. All right, that is about it for today's panel. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you to all of my amazing panelists who showed up today. It was so great talking to you. Please leave some love for all of our panelists down in the comments below. Share what you're working on, tell us how you're doing, give us a joke if you like. And I just wanted to thank you all for being here. It's been so much fun. Thank you all.